It was just a choice, right? I think that very early on when we realized we were going to commit to each other, that we knew we had to invest the time and the energy and whatever it took to make that happen. And
we made it work, and now we're here. So I'm thrilled.
Happily Ever After has finally arrived. After a whirlwind 2-year love story, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have finally tied the knot.
It was a church with millions and millions of people there, not watching a performance, but watching two people who were in love and who have come to God to bless their love in their lives, and the whole world rejoiced. That's such an incredible thing. It's as my grandma would say, that's a glory hallelujah moment.
This is Harry and Meghan, a royal wedding.
We were introduced actually by a mutual friend. It was through her, and then we met once and then twice back to back, 2 dates in London last July.
yes.
Beginning of July.
As a royal engagement, this has been relatively brief, but you have to think about it. Only 100 years ago, royal marriages were often arranged. You know, a foreign princess would be plucked out of Europe to marry the king, the one who was roughly the right age, the one who was roughly the right sort of type. And of course now we've let people choose the love of their lives like everybody else does.
Harry saw Meghan's photograph on Violet von Westenfeld's Instagram account because Violet does PR for Ralph Lauren, and Meghan was in this country, in England, doing some PR for Suits, and she was wearing Ralph Lauren. He saw the photograph and thought, wow, she's hot. And Violet said, well, you know, would you like to meet her? She's over here. Of course Meghan knew she was going on a blind date, but I mean, that's all slight fluff, you know, that she hardly knew anything about Harry. We now subsequently discover that, you know, she'd watched the Diana's wedding. She was an avid fan of the royal family, so she knew exactly who she was going on a blind date with. So it wasn't really a blind date at all.
You know, clearly they clicked on the first date, had another date, and then started this long-distance relationship. And the only thing about the relationship that may have meant it fell by the wayside was the distance involved. But clearly, you know, every opportunity they had, whether it be friends' marriages or just at the end of a royal tour, Harry would fly to Canada or she would fly over here to London. So they did well to keep that going, given they were both extremely busy people.
And we knew we had to invest the time and the energy and whatever it took to make that happen. And so yes, with the filming schedule, it was not the easiest because it of course included a lot of travel back and forth, but...
I don't think you've had any idea what time zone you've been on for the last year and a half.
No.
No. Coming over here 4 days or a week and then going back and then straight into filming the next day, 4 a.m. wake-up calls on a Monday,
yes.
Straight into set, you know. And
right off the plane and straight to set,
yeah,
just coming
I'm just
back
trying to stay as close as possible, but you know, on 2 different time zones and 5 hours apart does have its challenges. But but we made it work and now we're here, so I'm thrilled.
Well, Harry had to go to Toronto for the Invictus Games, which is his big charity, and Toronto is Meghan's adopted hometown, so they met there, and he decided that it was a good moment, or his press people decided it was a good moment for them to be photographed together. And they were watching a tennis match, and she was wearing a sort of big shirt and ripped jeans, and she looked really cool.
And 6 months ago, they announced they were engaged.
Your Royal Highness, Meghan Markle, congratulations to you both.
Harry and Meghan gave an engagement interview in which he explained, well, actually, she did most of the explaining and she did most of the talking. And she said that Harry had gone down on one knee and she was just roasting a chicken in his cottage on the Kensington Palace complex, because they kind of couldn't go anywhere very much because they were followed by paps everywhere. So they stayed home a lot, and she loves cooking. And he went down on one knee and asked her to marry him, and she said yes.
Just an amazing surprise. It was so sweet and natural and very romantic. He got on one knee.
Of course.
Was it an instant yes from you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I could barely let you finish proposing. I was like, can I say yes now?
She didn't even let me finish. She said, can I say yes, can I yes now? And then there was hugs and I had the ring in my finger and I was like, can I give you the ring? And she goes, oh yes, the ring.
I think it's a really interesting time for the royal family, and I think this marriage sort of cements a transition that's been happening for a while with the monarchy modernising and moving with the times. If you look back to, 30 years ago, even, divorce was such a taboo. It's no longer a taboo. Our next king and queen are both divorced. So the fact that Harry is now able to marry someone who's been divorced isn't an issue, is a great thing. She's mixed race. That would have been an issue probably years ago. It isn't anymore. It's great. It means that Harry's wife is going to be much more reflective of society in general than the sort of blue-blooded people who've married into the royal family previously. So I think it's a brilliant thing. But above all of that, they're clearly in love. So that's, all the other things are just a bonus in helping to show a much more modern, relevant monarchy.
Ever since the announcement of their engagement on November 27, 2017, the world was eagerly awaiting the next royal spectacular.
They're very affectionate. They're clearly a couple very much in love. You can see that whether they're, doing an official engagement or just, on their way to and from. They're very affectionate with each other, very sort of supportive of each other, and clearly very happy. It's very sweet.
The eyes of the world were on the historic town of Windsor. The wedding was held at St. George's Chapel in the grounds of Windsor Castle, the Queen's favourite residence.
Now, Windsor Castle is what the Queen regards as home in London. It's 29 miles out of London. It's in a beautiful, scenic town, very old town, and it's where she has her horses. It's where she can be private. Buckingham Palace is a wonderful, wonderful building, but that's sort of thought of as the office. That's where lots of staff come. That's where she can meet ambassadors. That's where she can deal with all the things she has to. But Windsor is home.
They wanted Windsor for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a more intimate venue than Westminster Abbey, and I think, Harry not being directly in the direct line of succession, he didn't want a big state do, and nor did Meghan. It has enough guests to allow them to have lots of people there, but make it feel a little bit more intimate. Also, it's a place that's very close to the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. They're in residence at Windsor at the moment, so it's easier for them to get to. They're in their 90s. Prince Philip has just had a hip operation, so again, that helps. And also, it's a place that we know that's become very special to them. They've spent time at Windsor together when they were going out before they got engaged. We know they spent time at Windsor Castle and at Frogmore. So all of those things, I think it was a very personal choice.
They love Windsor. The Queen loves Windsor. They regard it, although she doesn't own Windsor, they regard it as their home, and it's obviously got all these, beautiful grounds. And they even changed the plane so they wouldn't fly over, because almost, I think, every 30 seconds a plane comes over Windsor Castle. It's right on a flight plan. So they stopped that.
The ceremony is being held at St. George's Chapel, which is part of Windsor Castle, and it's in the old crenellated walls. What's interesting about the chapel is it's beautiful. It's not huge. I think about 600 people can fit in, which is nothing like Westminster Abbey, which is 3 times the size.
Built in 1475, this stunning 15th century Gothic chapel has seen many a royal wedding within its walls. Hundreds of hours of planning brought incredible beauty and elegance to a setting fit for a fairy tale.
Arches of beautiful white peonies and roses, and it was all sourced from the Queen's gardens, the royal gardens.
Meghan Markle's wedding day starts pretty early. The wedding's at 12. Meghan will have spent the night at Clifton, famous hotel very nearby, with her mother, Doria Ragland. And Harry is going to spend the night with his best man, Prince William.
Before the guests began to arrive, and before the crowds began lining the streets, a massive operation was underway to ensure that every aspect of the couple's special day would go swimmingly.
Preparation for a wedding on this scale has been going on for, the last 6 months since they got engaged, but even before that. And it's extraordinary, the scale of the preparation, not just from Windsor preparing itself and everything that goes with that, from road management to security, huge security operation, but then all the finer details of the wedding, the dress, the cake, the catering, the invitations, getting people from around the world over here, the broadcasting, all of that. It's a massive operation, and it's taken all hands on deck, all the households, Kensington Palace, Buckingham Palace, and Clarence House, so many councils, the help of the government, the Department for Culture and Sport are on it. It's huge. It's a major national event.
So on the security side, of course, there's a great deal of worry, but that will have been very efficiently handled. Sewers will have been searched, every street will have been searched. I think the police, MI5, Scotland Yard, sniffer dogs will all have been involved.
Normally, royal weddings are organised by the Lord Chamberlain and done in a very formal manner, but in this case, I think Harry and Meghan had a big hand in the organisation. And the most similar wedding would have been Prince Edward to Sophie Rhys-Jones, which was also at Windsor. And they also invited, I think they invited 2,000 members of the public who'd been working on their charitable causes. And they left the chapel in a carriage and drove around Windsor town. So it was modelled on another wedding, but it had obviously some very important twists to it.
This is not a state wedding. It will feel like it. It will look like it because there's going to be a carriage and outriders. But this is nothing like the wedding of William and Catherine at Westminster Abbey.
Believe it or not, William and Kate's wedding wasn't a state occasion either. Charles and Diana's was, because he is the heir to the throne. And if you have a state occasion, it means you have to invite, heads of state, prime ministers, politicians. No, Meghan and Harry weren't under that kind of pressure. They could just invite their friends, but really there were an awful lot of people from their charities there.
Every detail has been carefully considered by Meghan and Harry, and by all reports, they have been involved in every single decision. Even their invited guests, they invited 1,200 members of the public, people who were war heroes, people on charity boards. They invited them personally to come and watch the wedding. Meghan and Harry provided gift bags for them. They have fruit and drinks for a little reception for them. They've tried very hard to be as inclusive as they possibly can.
But I think because a lot of the guests were sort of Hollywood A-listers, the public loved that because they could recognize them. You're not going to recognize, Harry's maiden aunt necessarily, but you are going to recognize George and Amal Clooney. And so there was Serena Williams, who we guessed would be there, who's a friend of Meghan's. And then Oprah Winfrey and the Clooneys actually, I think, only met Harry and Meghan a couple of times. So I think they were very surprised, but delighted to be invited. So, I mean, if you are the future Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you can actually invite anyone and they're going to come. I think I'd like to invite the Clooneys.
Well, we knew there were going to be a certain amount of celebrities. We knew Meghan was inviting most of the cast of Suits, who all came and had dinner at Clifton House with her the night before her big day. We were a bit surprised to see Oprah Winfrey. It was a pleasant surprise walking in with Idris Elba. Never bad on the eyes.
Well, I think Amal Clooney won the Best Dressed prize because she had this amazing orangey, sort of orangey yellow outfit on, which was Stella McCartney, and a matching hat. And he rather cutely had a matching tie and a handkerchief. I think he would have looked nice in a morning suit because he's very elegant, Clooney. So I think she definitely won the prize. Although I think one of William's cousins looked very, very good. And she had a floral dress and a floral hat, one of the McCorkadale girls.
One thing we saw was a true meeting of Hollywood royalty and British royalty. We've never seen so many celebrities at a royal wedding before. Interestingly enough, there were some royals cut off the guest list. Generally, at these things, we have a lot of cousins, a lot of royal connections, loose connections. Harry decided enough of that. He really cut short the kind of hangers-on, the people, second and third cousins. He was done. We're going to see from Harry, I think, a much more focus on real people and not so much his royal connection.
Meghan stayed with her mum, Doria Ragland. She stayed at Cliveden, which is a vast sort of luxury spa hotel, and very, very pretty place. And I think since they've been there, they've just been booked out forever.
As Meghan Markle and her mother Doria Ragland left Cliveden House and made their way to Windsor Castle, crowds got their very first glimpse of the blushing bride. A rapturous applause followed them as they made the drive down the long walk. In just over an hour, Meghan would pass along this road again, but by then she will be royalty.
Well, there was great excitement when William and Harry arrived, and they walked down very sort of casually from the castle down to the chapel, and they were wearing their dress uniform. And the Queen had given him permission to wear the uniform with a beard, because normally in the army you can't wear the ceremonial uniform with a beard, but she loves Harry, so he can get away with anything.
Prince Harry was commissioned into the Household Cavalry Regiment, into the Blues and Royals Squadron, and he served with them for more than 10 years, and they'll have a very special role on the day. There's also going to be support on the day. We'll see representatives from the Gurkhas, who Harry served with, and also the Army Air Corps, who he served with later on as an Apache co-gunner pilot. So there'll be a strong representation from the military, and also lots of other regiments that he has honorary positions, like the Royal Marines, in which he's now Captain General. The armed forces is very close to Harry's heart, and so there'll be, we'll see a lot of them on the day.
Everyone loved Doria, and she looked wonderful because she still had her dreadlocks and her nose ring. So she was saying, "I'm not changing for anyone," but she looked very elegant in a sort of pistachio Oscar de la Renta coat and a little Stephen Jones hat. So the Queen wore this wonderful bright lime green dress and coat, which was by Stuart Parvin, who's one of her favoured designers. And the hat was made by Angela Kelly, who's her dresser come personal assistant, and set up her own clothing business within the palace so that the Queen can have her clothes made there. The Queen always wears bright colours so she can be seen, because she's tiny. She knows people have come to see her, so she has to stand out. And she's got this amazing skin, so she can get away with wearing these vivid colours. Prince Philip had obviously made a decision that whatever happened, he was going to walk down that aisle. Once Prince Philip makes up his mind, he's a Trojan, and he walked very upright, very steady, and there's no way he was ever going to go in a wheelchair. And he had literally only just recovered from a hip operation, and I think he'd also had a broken rib. So he wasn't in the greatest of shape, but you never would have known it.
Meghan stuck with a very British tradition, which is to have small children as your bridesmaids or flower girls and page boys, rather than adult female bridesmaids, which is what Americans typically do. She followed the British way, and she had her family and friends' children. Of course, we saw Princess Charlotte and Prince George amongst the group. There was no bad behavior that I could see. They all seemed very much on their best behavior, shepherded very closely into the church by their respective mothers.
I think Meghan thought she just couldn't choose between all her girlfriends who to have as a matron of honour. So she's got a very beautiful but very young gaggle of page boys and bridesmaids floating behind her, chief of which, of course, has got to be the future King of England, Prince George, and his sister, Princess Charlotte, William and Kate's children. They will not perhaps be two-faced, because they did this for Pippa Middleton, Catherine's sister, just a few months ago. But it's a big occasion. Also, there are a lot of godchildren. They're the Mulroney godchildren. Meghan is very friendly with Jessica Mulroney. And then there's a family called Litt. They live in California. And I gather that Meghan's always called them her other family. She's been very close to them. So there's their 2 children who are going to walk down the aisle. Harry is a godfather to a little Warren child. Now, John Warren is the Queen's horse trainer. He trains all her race horses, so she's very close to him. And his wife, Lady Caroline, is the daughter of the Earl of Carnarvon, who used to train the Queen's race horses, who she was very close to. So there's that connection. And then there's Mark Dwyer's son. Mark Dwyer has been a mentor and an advisor and a helper to Harry for a long, long time. And his little boy is also going to be following behind the bride.
I think everybody was stunned when Meghan got out of the Queen's Phantom Rolls Royce. I mean, she was in this virginal white dress with a beautiful train, and on the train were embroidered the emblems of the Commonwealth, because that's going to be her area of work. And she had, obviously her borrowed thing was the tiara, which was beautiful, beautiful bandeau tiara from the Queen's collection.
There's always a tremendous amount of speculation as to what designer the bride will wear. Going into this, the strong favorite was Ralph and Russo. In fact, it was widely reported Meghan would be wearing Ralph and Russo. And then, just yesterday, there was a very strong buzz that it was going to be Stella McCartney. So you can imagine everyone was completely taken off guard this morning when she emerged in a stunning dress by a British designer called Claire Waite Keller, who happens to be the first British artistic director of Givenchy. So she's wearing a Givenchy dress designed by a Brit. Meghan was always going to wear a British designer today. She has virtually no choice, but she chose an extremely classic, simple, and elegant design.
I met with Meghan late last year, and so we had an initial meeting, and then I found out in early January. Oh, it was an extraordinary moment when she told me, of course, it's an incredible thing to be part of such a historic moment, and the fact that also the opportunity to work with her. It was very collaborative. I think she had very much seen my work and knew what I did. I think she loved the fact that I was a British designer and working in a house such as Givenchy, which has got its roots in a very classical, beautiful style, of course, from the time of Hubert himself. So it was a wonderful way to kind of start the collaboration with her, just talking about that, and also finding what she really wanted for her day, and just to find the absolute perfect style for her. It's a process to actually work on a dress such as this, and part of it was really conversations at the beginning, and then through a series of sketches that I proposed to her, and we exchanged conversations about what would be the ultimate sort of lines and proportions and the scale of the dress. But over time, we quickly got to a point where I know she felt really that she knew exactly what she wanted, having tried some toiles and some of the mock-ups that I had shown her, and then it evolved into the final design. Oh, she's exactly what you see on TV. She's just so genuine and warm and radiant. She's just glowing, and she's a strong woman. She knows what she wants, and it was really an absolute joy working with her. And I came up with the idea of maybe representing each of the countries, the 53 countries of the Commonwealth, through their flora and fauna. And we both love the story of that. And it also meant that every single one of those countries also journeyed up the aisle with her, which I thought was a really poetic moment. Even the little 3D flowers here, which are done in organza and just lift gently off the veil. And then some of the flora, so you have some of the orchids from some of the Asian countries. And here's just some of the more wild flowers that would be in the veil and how they were represented in the scale.
She was very happy. It was a beautiful morning, you know, just the perfect morning when going to get married. It's pretty amazing. It's really hard to describe. I think it's going to hit me a little more tomorrow. When I get home, but it's surreal. Yeah, it's definitely surreal. It's something that, you know, we all could dream of, and when the dream comes, you know, and it's become reality, and it's actually almost better than the dream itself, then it's a home run. I'm not all I guess. And I just always loved her style. I just loved the way that easiness about her, and that smile that she has, and so there's just something that just, you know, calls you in some ways that way. So you always want to work with people that you feel that you might get along with, and that just might be a good partnership on that level.
Meghan walked out of the car all alone. This is something we don't see very often. Royal brides are always accompanied by their father. She looked very independent, very solitary, and very nervous, to be honest. But as she got to the end of the aisle and began to walk down, you could see her confidence, her natural grace coming through.
Meghan made her entrance to a fanfare of trumpets, which are very emotional and evocative. And the little page behind her just went, ah, like that. And so she made her entrance to this beautiful music sung by a Welsh soprano. And the sunlight was streaming through the medieval glass window, and it couldn't have been more beautiful. A little less than halfway down the aisle, there's a beautiful screen which was decorated with roses and peonies, and Prince Charles took her hand there and escorted her to the high altar to Harry, and he said, "Thanks, Papa." The thing that struck me about the ceremony was it looked to me as if they were the only two people there. I mean, they just looked into each other's eyes and the rest of the world wasn't there. And Meghan smiled her wonderful Hollywood smile, and she kept smiling. And then Harry lifted back her veil, which I'd not seen at a royal wedding before, and it was very romantic. And the other unusual thing was that Harry put on a wedding ring, which is really more European. Most British men don't wear wedding rings. Sort of aristocratic British men don't wear wedding rings. I don't know why. They just don't. They wear a signet ring, with their sort of coat of arms. But they don't wear a... But so Harry's kind of being modern and doing what Meghan wants him to do.
Well, I'm happy that this has been a day of joy and happiness for both the royal couple and the families, but for everybody who was there in the church, and by church I mean those who were physically present and those who were virtually present. Church is bigger than space, than physical space, absolutely. And it was a church with millions and millions of people there, not just watching, as you say, not watching a performance, but watching two people who are in love and who have come to God to bless their love in their lives, and the whole world rejoiced. That's such an incredible thing. My grandma would say, that's a glory hallelujah moment.
Well, obviously, the preacher Curry was a standout moment of the service, because we saw for the first time ever, probably, the royal family start to get the giggles in church. And normally they have a very stern church face. The Queen and Prince Philip kept their church faces, but the other members of the family were tittering. And that, we just loved that. I mean, because he went on and on and on. And it was meant to be 6 minutes, and it was nearly 14. Not that anyone disliked it, because he went on, but he was a bit repetitive. But in a way, that's what everybody is going to remember about that wedding. It's the Archbishop Curry.
What was he say? I may not preach like Peter, I may not pray like Paul. I think we have a lot to learn, but you learn from all over the world. Yeah. And I learned from Michael this passion, this openness, this enthusiasm, and that know that it comes out of a living relationship with Jesus Christ, not out of some purely academic process. It's from deep within his heart. And I praise God for the fact that because of what Christ does, we are brought together, we belong to the same church, we're brothers in Christ.
His message was that of love, and he kept repeating this. And he opened with the words of Martin Luther King, and then he said, this is all about love. Marriage is all about love. Bringing these two people together is all about love. Well, he could have said the whole thing in 10 minutes. Well, no, in 6 minutes, the 6 minutes he was allotted. But I think he just got into it, and it really was wonderful.
Come on. Let's have an honest answer.
It was planned, and I thought it was going to be 6 minutes. It was a little longer than that, because there were pauses in there. Okay. Forgive me later, I'll get it.
One of your colleagues said 13 minutes, 10 seconds.
Is that, 13 minutes? Oh, you had to time it, didn't you? He said 12. I said, I don't know how long it was, and the Archbishop said, it was 12 minutes.
I was being kind.
When Meghan and Harry were pronounced man and wife, there was an uproarious cheer from outside that they could hear themselves, and they brought huge grins to both of their faces. Meghan and Harry very much felt the support of the great British public throughout the day, because they could hear them very close, just outside the castle walls. And it was wonderful to see them react to what they could hear were cheers of joy and support. When Meghan and Harry emerged from the church, we had a beautiful shot of them framed by gorgeous bouquets of flowers, and then, of course, a very touching and romantic kiss, which we knew was coming, but it was nonetheless romantic and spontaneous when it happened. It has become tradition since Charles and Diana for the royal newlyweds to kiss for the crowd. Now, there was no balcony at Buckingham Palace here at Windsor, so what they did was, as they exited the church, they stood on the steps of the castle in front of all of these flowers, and they kissed. And it was absolutely magnificent and wonderful. The couple is clearly very much in love, and it was a beautiful moment. After Meghan and Harry exited the church, the royals stood behind them, several steps in a line. It was a way to show respect to the new couple, and it was a beautiful, beautiful family image.
Prince Charles's brief was to take Meghan to the high altar and give her away to his son, but also to look after Doria Ragland. And he's very, very polite and very gentlemanly. And after the actual ceremony, he made sure Doria didn't feel left out, and chatted away to her on the steps of the chapel, and he would have looked after her.
Poor Kate Middleton had about 25 days in total following the birth of Prince Louis before she had to show up and look beautiful at her new sister-in-law's wedding. This is something that all of us new mothers would have looked on with some dread. However, Kate Middleton, as usual, looked immaculate. She was wearing a primrose yellow Alexander McQueen coat dress. Now, of course, Alexander McQueen is who designed Kate's own wedding dress. So I think it was a nod and a throwback to that very special day for her as well. But today was a big day for Kate because not only was she on hand to support Harry and Meghan and William, but also her two children played a very big role in the service, and I'm sure she was nervous about their behavior. Prince George has been known to go off book more than once.
Well, I think the carriage procession it really was a fairy tale. Here's this girl, actress from LA, and suddenly she's in a beautiful carriage with a prince by her side. I mean, it is a fairy tale. And the excitement of the crowd was really stimulating and catching, and everyone was cheering and screaming. They were screaming, "Harry, Harry."
Just after 1 o'clock, the couple embarked on a celebratory carriage procession through the town of Windsor. The streets were lined with thousands upon thousands of cheering well-wishers. It was a grand, regal display, and the newlyweds looked over the moon at their reception.
When Meghan and Harry took their very first carriage ride as husband and wife, they chose the Ascot carriage. Now, of all the carriages in the Queen's Mews, the Ascot carriage is the highest off the ground. They very intentionally chose this so that the most people could see them as a couple. Of course, it's an open carriage, very high up, and they were able to be easily viewed by all the many people who had waited hours and hours and days to get a look at this very happy new couple.
I think preparing to be a princess must be quite an interesting thing to do, and I rather wish I'd done it. She will have been taught now, and she will know now about who precedes her and who she has to curtsy to, because the royals are quite sticklers for that, because that sets them apart from everyone else. I think that she will understand that, and I think does naturally understand, that you make everyone welcome, you make everyone feel happy they're there. And there will be men who've fought in Afghanistan with Harry there, who would never have dreamt in their lives that they would ever go to a royal wedding. So I think what they both are is very good at making people feel comfortable. Of course, she will have had to, I hope, practice sitting in one of those coaches. Her Majesty recently talked about how they're not all very comfortable. I mean, many of these coaches were made well over 100 years ago. Some of them have been fixed with sort of bumpers so you don't roll around too much. And also think how hard it's going to be, whatever the dress and whatever the veil, to climb up these narrow little steps and sit yourself down in the carriage and be comfortable. So I guess they'll have practiced that. I guess she'll have practiced her speech. and ask for advice, possibly not from my husband, but from someone who's outside the family. I think that all the lessons she's probably been having in the last few months, getting to know the palace, getting to know the staff at the palace, getting to know the staff that work for Harry in particular, and those for Harry and William, and now they will separate. I hear they're going to have a large flat in Kensington Palace, as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have. So they've been living in this tiny cottage. They're now going to have their own staff. They do have some already to handle their own arrangements, handle visits. And of course, they're not going on honeymoon. I should think they'll have 2 or 3 days to themselves, but there's a royal garden party in Buckingham Palace, and apparently Meghan has said she wants to go and Harry wants to go. And I think they'll probably drift off somewhere very romantic that means somewhere to them, Botswana or Africa or Australia, sometime in August when everybody else is away.
Well, as an American, I can say that we don't have princesses. For us, it's a Disney fairy tale. It's something that we admire, but we don't quite have. So for Americans, today's been a very magical day. There are as many Americans here nearly as there are Brits. Certainly in terms of television reporters, we've seen 300 people alone from NBC in America have come out to cover this wedding because Americans feel like we finally got our own princess. And not only that, the fact that she's biracial has been tremendously powerful for young girls who have yet to see a princess that looks like them. This has been an amazing day from that perspective. From the British side, Brits I know are not typically overly patriotic, but today has been a day of unreserved joy and affection. Prince Harry is one of the favorite royals of nearly everyone I know. And the reason is he's always been someone that people could relate to. He gets himself in trouble. He has done all kinds of naughty things, but it's the kind of thing that people laugh at, respond to, and feel like he gets it. Harry really distinguished himself in the military as well. I think that was kind of the making of him as a young man. He has shown an unabashed passion for humanitarian causes, particularly in Africa, where he set up his own charity. And I believe that Harry's beloved by the British public. Therefore, they're very much welcoming of his choice.
The reception was held in St George's Hall, which is where they have state banquets. And it's part of the state rooms of Windsor Castle, so you can see it. And it's beautiful beamed hall, huge. But it was a standing reception because 600 people you can't seat 600 people in there. And they had footmen were bringing around champagne in magnums, I think it was, and this beautiful sort of what they call bowl food, which is like a little scoop, and they had lobster and shrimps and avocados and asparagus, and then there was a stage at the end, just a sort of, not a huge stage, and Harry got up and Prince Charles gave a speech in which he talked about practically seemed like yesterday he was changing Harry's nappy, and now look at him. It was slightly embarrassing, but not too bad. And then Harry got up and he thanked everybody, and in My Wonderful Wife, and every time he said my wife, everybody cheered. And then he said, does anyone play the piano? And then Elton John got up, and there's a big, huge Steinway there, and he played 4 numbers, and that was just amazing. The evening event was at Frogmore House, which is part of the Windsor Castle estate. A beautiful house with a great big lake. And I think they were all outside having drinks to start with. And then they had, they had tables of 10, that's what they normally do. And the tables were named after Harry and Meghan's favorite places, like in Botswana. And so everything was slightly themed. And then it sounded like they really did party. And James Corden was dressed as Henry VIII. Can you believe it? And he acted as sort of unofficial compere, and somebody else was a DJ, and they had a lot of 60s soul music, and then it got really, like sort of hip hop later.
Well, I think for me, the standout moments were the first glimpse of Meghan's dress, seeing her standing on the kind of the entrance of the chapel, waiting to go in, looking magnificent. The train, Meghan's beautiful train, and also the very touching sight of Meghan's mother sitting by herself, holding back the tears, not quite so successfully. It's a big moment for any mother, but particularly for Doria Ragland today must have been incredibly overwhelming. Having your daughter walk down the aisle by Prince Charles is something rather extraordinary, and certainly would have been for her. There was also a particularly touching moment when Meghan first walked down the aisle to Harry. He looked at her and he said, "Hi." And then he said, "You look amazing." So for those of us romantics, it brought quite a tear to our eyes to see this couple that's very obviously madly in love see each other at the altar for the very first time. When Prince Charles finished his walk down the aisle, Harry turned to him and said, "Thanks, Pa." And it was very, very touching. And then we also saw, of course, the bond between William and Harry. William was very supportive of Harry and looked himself to be getting quite emotional on Harry's behalf. I think the connection between William and Harry, particularly in light of the fact that their mother couldn't be there, is all the more touching to see on this special day. I had the extraordinary good fortune to be at William and Kate's wedding as well as Harry and Meghan's today. And I would say what stood out to me was William seemed far more nervous than Harry did. Harry was far more emotional than William. We saw a lot more tears from Harry. I don't remember seeing any from William on the day. But in both cases, the brides appeared to be less nervous and more strong than the grooms, which I thought was very touching and romantic. Both William and Kate and Meghan and Harry appear to be two couples who are very much madly in love with each other, and far from the days in royals past where things were arranged and things were loveless. In both young couples today, we see a great, strong bond of romance, love, and affection.
So their first marital home is going to be Nottingham Cottage in Kensington Palace. It's where William and Kate first lived when they married. And it was actually Harry's bachelor pad for a while. It's a 2-bedroom cottage, which sounds quite modest, but obviously it is in the grounds of this spectacular palace. But we know that there are lots of renovations going on within the complex. And the apartment next door to William and Kate is actually being tipped as their future home. It's a 21-room apartment, currently houses the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. But we know renovations are taking place, and I would be quite surprised if at some point they don't move into a bigger place. They're going to need the room, I think. Well, Harry's always talked about wanting kids. I mean, a couple of years ago in New Zealand, he told a few of us, of course, I'd love to have children right now, but he hadn't found the right person at this stage. And we know Meghan's probably at a stage in her life where she's ready to be a mum, and they both have a great connection with young people, as we've seen on their visits to Cardiff recently, getting down, playing with them, hugging them. There was a lovely group hug moment for Meghan. I think she's going to be a fantastic mum, judging from the outside. They've said, watch this space. I would not expect them to take too long before starting a family.
Harry loves kids, and he's brilliant with them because he's a bit of a kid himself. He loves kids, loves animals, loves playing silly games with them. I mean, that's Harry. Harry is Harry, he's such a free spirit. I think he will be longing to have a family. But I feel that he is so in love with Meghan that she can really help him. I think he when he came out of the army, he was quite lonely because, William and Kate were there, but they were all sort of happy families. And I think Harry was desperate to get married. And he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a very emotional person. And I think that they are a very good match because I think Meghan's a bit tougher than Harry. And I think she will, they will be a very good team together. But we always say that. You have to be careful because we said it about Fergie and Andrew, we said it about Edward and Sophie, we said it about Charles and Diana. So it doesn't always work. The first thing they did was they attended a royal garden party, and that was because it was in aid of Prince Charles's 70th birthday, which is coming up in November. Then they went on their mini honeymoon, and when they came back, they attended Trooping the Colour, which was obviously, Harry was very anxious for Meghan to see the British military at its very, very best. And then the Queen took Meghan to Chester for what they call an away day, which is when they do 3 or 4 engagements in a day. And she did this with Kate. And she probably wishes she'd done it with Diana and Fergie, because it's a way of showing Meghan the royal ropes from the number one person. And then, obviously, then they've all been at Royal Ascot, which is another glorious English institution. And Harry wants Meghan, to see sort of the English social season.
Together, as I said, there's a hell of a lot of stuff and work that needs doing. At the moment, for us, it's going to be making sure that our relationship is always put first. But no, look, both of us have passions for wanting to make change for good, and with lots of young people running around the Commonwealth, that's where we're going to spend most of our time, hopefully.
And it was really one of the first things we connected on. It was one of the first things we started talking about when we met, was just the different things that we wanted to do in the world and how passionate we were about seeing change. I think that was, that's what got date 2 in the books, probably.
Plenty to talk about.
What is interesting about Harry and Meghan is she is an activist. She's been an activist before she met him. She spoke about feminism and gender equality in the United Nations. She cares about LGBT causes. She cares about Africa. She went to Africa to help get water to somewhere. So the Commonwealth is a natural interest for both of them, and we have a Commonwealth, Britain. Even though they're not part of the old British Empire, they voluntarily say they want to stay in the Commonwealth, and they have interaction with one another, and the Queen is their very head of state, and they like that, they choose that. So they have both said that they want to help with the Commonwealth. Harry went on a fantastically successful trip to Jamaica before he met Meghan. And I think that would play into the fact that she is of mixed race, as so much of the Commonwealth is. And also, they want to change the world, these two. And I think having youth, having vigor, having excitement behind them, they will be in a very good position to change and help make the world a better place.
I think the new royals are sending a very clear message by the fact that they're not going on honeymoon, they're not jetting off to Mustique, they're going straight to work, back to the kind of humanitarian interests that really joined them together in the first place. You know, Meghan and Harry have said from the beginning, in addition to the obvious mutual attraction, what united them was a common interest and passion for doing good. And the fact that as a couple, they're not even jetting off to the Maldives like William and Kate or anybody else. They're going straight to work, back out there, trying to help people. This is going to set the tone, I think, of their entire relationship.
We've seen Harry and Meghan out and about doing lots of engagements together for certain charities. Street Games is one, community-based sports project for young people that Harry's been very involved with, that Meghan has thrown her support behind. Also, we've seen them out and about at engagements that look at female empowerment and gender equality, which is something that Meghan's very keen on. We know when she gets married, she will join the Royal Foundation of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry. She will become the 4th patron of that. And then together we'll see them, doing a lot more engagements together around those core issues that that foundation supports, which is conservation, supporting young people and the armed forces. After they get married, we're also going to see them embark on a lot of overseas travel. We know that just last month, the Queen made Harry a Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. And that means he's going to be doing a lot of work to support young people across the Commonwealth and also in the UK. So we know that in October, they'll be in Australia for the Invictus Games. That tour will almost certainly be widened out to possibly New Zealand, maybe some South Pacific islands too in the Commonwealth. So they are really going to be seen as a sort of young, glamorous royal power couple doing a lot of philanthropic and charity work, and also boosting, the monarchy standing and the causes that the monarchy supports, things like the Commonwealth that are very close to the monarchy's heart.
What do you think your mother would have thought of Meghan or said about Meghan?
Oh, they'd be thick as thieves, without question. I think she would be over the moon, jumping up and down, so excited for me. But then, as I said, would have probably been best friends with Meghan. So no, it is days like today when I really miss having her around and miss being able to share the happy news. But with the ring and with everything else that's going on, I'm sure she's with us. I'm sure she's with us. Jumping up and down somewhere else.
Harry and Meghan came out of the castle to drive through Home Park to Frogmore, and Meghan was wearing this stunning Stella McCartney dress, and Harry had this E-Type Jaguar, beautiful blue E-Type Jaguar, and Meghan was wearing a sort of one of Diana's aquamarine ring. So everything had a significance, and they literally drove off into the sunset. It was extraordinary. And I think that is my lasting image of them.
The royal wedding of Harry and Meghan was one of the most celebrated and unforgettable spectacles the world has seen in a long time. A historic day, a pure celebration of joy and love. Their happily ever after begins now.